get started with our event for the evening. I won't hold you guys too long. So this is Wellness Week, brought to you by the Women's Center and Good Life House. So thank you to the Good Life House, and that's awesome. Tonight we are going to be hearing from Miss Pam Kelly, who is a registered dietitian, licensed nutritionist, and certified eating disorder specialist in nutrition. She got her undergraduate degree in foods and nutrition science at UT Chattanooga, and then completed an internship at Vanderbilt, and has spent the majority of her career working with individuals to improve their personal health. She now maintains a private practice in Chattanooga where she sees women ranging in age from like school age to much older, talking about eating issues. She often speaks on the subject of nutrition and is honored later this year to be chosen to speak at the International Eating Disorder Professionals Conference for the second time, so that's pretty cool. She's often seen on local TV in Chattanooga and in print, and she also meets with her clients via Skype and in person, which is cool. So here is Ms.
Thank you. I'm really excited about being here. Talking about food and nutrition is my favorite thing, and it has been my favorite thing all my life. I'll tell you that I hope so much that you all find a career that you enjoy and like to continue to study the way I have. Food and nutrition has changed so much in the 20 years that I've been practicing. It's just fascinating to me, and you have to constantly study, and I make a joke that I should at this point have a PhD because I've spent so much time in study, but I love it, and I think it's important to stay on top of what you know, so I hope you guys find the same thing for you. I am going to talk to you today about trends in nutrition, and I picked this topic because so many of the clients that come into my office are completely confused about what to eat. There's different messages from a lot of varying sources in the media and print media about how we should eat, what we should eat, when we should eat, how we should eat. And I want to explain some of those to you, what's happening as far as trends in the nutrition industry, and also misconceptions about nutrition. There's a lot of mistakes being made out there, and there's a lot of misinformation, and I want to explain a little bit of that to you. And then I want to help you understand how you can integrate what we're going to talk about today into the reality of your own nutrition and nutrition patterns. So what we're going to talk about are 4 trends. I picked 4. I'll tell you the 2 that I'm not going to talk about: GMOs and high fructose corn syrup. And the reason I'm not going to talk about those 2 things is because I could stand up here and talk to you about those 2 things all day long. So I'll speak of them in passing, but I'm not going to put a lot of effort into those 2 topics. But I want to talk about a flexitarian diet, which is very common. It's a new trend in an eating style and organic green diets. I want to talk to you about functional diets and value diets, which is kind of an interesting new word that you're going to hear a lot out as far as value eating. I will talk about gluten diets. I felt like that was important because so many people are on gluten-free diets. A little bit about vegan diets, and then mindfulness and intuitive eating, which is kind of a non-diet approach. Then I'll fill you in on some of the misconceptions and how they're impacting you. In some ways you may not even know about it. So first, the flexitarian diet. Fun picture. A flexitarian would be what you would expect it to be. It's being flexible. And a flexitarian diet is eating healthful vegetarian food if it's available to you and it's an option that you can make. So you may be in the cafeteria, you may be in a restaurant, and on the menu there may be some good vegetarian options that you might want to choose. But it's designed for those who don't desire or they don't have the time to be a full-time vegetarian because it takes a lot of work. So there's 3 levels of that. The beginner is where you attempt to do 2 meatless meals per week, and you still have 5 to 6 ounces of protein every day on the days that you're not vegetarian. Advanced would be to up to 3 to 4 vegetarian days per week, and then an expert flexitarian is somebody that has 5 meatless meals per week, and then have a couple of days that they eat meat during the week. This is a really good option. Now, if you have a moral issue with vegetarianism, then obviously this wouldn't work for you. But if it's because you're trying to do a meatless lifestyle and you want a plant-based diet, this is a really good way to go. It's easy and it's doable, and it is an area that's really getting quite a bit of steam in the diet. So the benefits of it, that it's easy to follow, especially for a younger person who's trying to introduce vegetarianism into their life. It's also easier if your significant other or family members are not vegetarian, and it's easier transition for those who don't like a lot of the vegetarian foods such as soy, etc. So the drawbacks are being vegetarian is a huge responsibility to get enough protein. And I can't tell you how many people have come into my office, and by being vegetarian, what they did is they just stopped eating meat. They didn't replace the protein, and it really takes adequate protein for growth and development, which is by up to age 25, by the way. So you guys are still in that process of needing additional protein. If you're an athlete, it's very difficult to be a vegetarian without a lot of work. And those who are not, I mentioned this a minute ago, fully capable of accepting the responsibility of getting adequate protein, flexitarian lifestyle might be a better fit, because you know you've got those options to get a little bit more protein. Another trend is the green trend, and it's the keeping it real. It's trying to do more organic-based eating, and I'm sure you know, even here on campus, you guys have some vegetarian options and some organic options. There's a difference between seasonal eating and organic eating, and the main difference in that is seasonal eating is there's a good chance it's going to be organic if it's coming from our area. Organic could be a can of tomatoes that you get at Walmart that has organic written on the side of it. So just because something says it's organic is not necessarily meaning that it's the best health. But what we do see is much more trends of people eating less processed food, less ingredients in the food labels of the products that they're eating, and having more natural nutrients in the foods that they're eating. So the good news is you have the availability of having more fresh whole foods, more nutritious foods available to you, and restaurants and food manufacturers are hearing that. So before, you would stop at a market and maybe all you could find would be peanuts and a candy bar. Now you go into a market and you find all kinds of different options. And also, there's less waste, because if you're eating more organic or whole foods, there's a lot less packaging, because we're not talking about little 100-calorie packs, right? The bad news, eating organic is more expensive. It's less attainable for some markets. People that live in an urban desert where they don't have access to a lot of grocery stores have a very hard time eating this way. And it tastes a little bit different. If you've been raised on canned green beans and canned asparagus and you switch to the real thing, sometimes you find it a little bit less tasty. So stores, cafes, restaurants are all offering more soups, more salads, more markets are having fresh foods, so that's good. Here's some drawbacks though. Food manufacturers are now labeling foods with green ink. They're putting green labels on things, and I'll show you an example of it in a minute. Just because it's organic does not mean it's healthier. There's guidelines that have to be followed by organic, to meet organic criteria, no pesticides, no growth hormones, etc. But a lot of the small organic farms and manufacturers are now being bought up by the big companies. So even things like Kashi cereals, now owned by Kraft, and Horizon Milk is now owned by another major dairy. So it's getting diluted. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that organic doesn't mean necessarily healthy. Here's what I'm talking about. They actually did this. They took a Milky Way and they changed the print on the front green Milky Way. Sales went up by 25%. Look at the bottom one. I don't know if you can see that, but it's showing two labels. If you were in a rush and you were just grabbing one, which one would you grab? The green one or the red one? The green. Food manufacturers are a step ahead of us all the time. So you really have to pay attention to things like that. Green is go, right? Green is good. Another trend is value-added or functional foods, and so people are using foods now for more than just food, and I'll show you some examples of that. Instead of just drinking milk because it's milk, they're adding probiotics to milk now. There's several brands out that have probiotics to it. Yogurt the same way. A lot of them tout the amount of live active cultures that they're putting in yogurt more than they used to. A lot of foods are being developed now to enhance brain function and choosing foods specifically. And I'll tell you, there's some truth to that too. When I was in college, you could always tell the group of the dietetic students because we were eating meat and bacon when there was a test due, because your brain operates much better in a protein-based diet when you're studying very hard. So nuts and seeds, I'd have a little thing of nuts right by your desk when you're studying for a test. Berries too, the antioxidants that are in berries are really helpful with brain function. Those two things combined together are a powerhouse. But the point is, people are really beginning to look at foods that way. Used to, people would say, don't eat nuts, they're, quote, fattening. Now, more important, people are eating nuts because they're so good for us. Immune system boosters, the same thing. The more colorful the food, the more it helps boost your immune system. And in Sewanee, we all know, you guys get sick a lot. The more you can do to enhance your immune system, the better. So I would be eating as much fruit as you can get, colorful ones, and especially red ones. Elderberries and acai berries are also real popular right now, and you can get them in fruit smoothies. You've got them in your cafeteria. A lot of the real colorful powerhouse smoothies have these berries in them. Fish and fish oils. Every one of you should be using some sort of an omega-3 fatty acid supplement for brain health. There are so many studies that say, especially for women, the fatty acids that we get from fish help with depression, brain function, and might even protect against heart disease. So that's salmon. Sardines. I wish I was brave enough to eat sardines. I just can't do it. My best buddy does. She takes them on her horseback riding trips and eats sardines and swears they're great. But boy, if you can do it, more power to you. If you can, take fish oil supplements. You'll get what you need from it. So those are the trends that I'm seeing a lot out there that you're hearing about that are valid, things for you to be looking at, except, of course, the green candy bar. But trends for diet and weight loss, calorie is still the boss. It's still all about calories. And I'll explain why in a minute. I am not suggesting at all that you count calories, but the basic mathematics of calories in versus calories out still works. And there's underlying issues that affect that because nothing's black or white, but it's always going to come into what you put in and what comes out of your body. So it's interesting, though, that as people who buy food, we see so much with low-fat, fat-free, low glycemic index, all kinds of labels touting ways that we need to eat food, sugar-free, reduced calorie. They're still there. They're still in the forefront of the shelves. But is that really what is going to help our health? So, it's really food manufacturers trying to get us to buy yet another product. So this says, I'll have a Diet Coke with that. So the fact is we're getting such mixed messages that we've got a habit of saying, I want the dressing on the side, or I want, fat-free ice cream or fat-free milk or a diet soda, but we're still kind of combining it with things that probably aren't real healthy. So what I'm saying is to pay attention about some of the mixed messages that you see out there with consumers. So here's another trend. This is the geographic diet trend. Look at the different diets that are going on out there. South Beach, Miami, Sonoma, French women's, Mediterranean, Japanese, Indian. It's because no matter what you look at, the food intake over there is always going to be better than the food intake is over here. And here's an example of that. Think about rice. Rice has gotten a bad name in our country. Why? It's white, it's polished, it's starchy, it's a carbohydrate. So many people have decreased their rice intake. Do you think about what they feed the world with? What is it? Rice. So it's very interesting when you look at, you have to be in a particular environment to see the impact of that particular food in that particular culture. You can't necessarily take a diet from another part of the world and bring it over here and expect it to have the same result. I can tell you with the Japanese diet, it's basically fish and vegetables and a lot of rice. But what do that's so different than we? They don't do a lot of fast food, they don't do a lot of convenience food, and they ride and walk so many places. Same with the French diet. Yes, they do have more wine, they do have more chocolate, they do have more butter, but they also walk everywhere, and their portions are very small. In most European countries, it's considered rude to ask for seconds. So their portions are a lot smaller. So even though it's very tempting to think that these other diets might be the answer, when you take it and put it in our context, they're actually pretty much the same. So the other diets that I'm seeing out there right now are the high-calorie diets, eat a high-calorie amount one day and then cut calories 3 days. There's a book out there that talks about that, sort of interval eating. The feast and famine diet, which is sort of similar, that you can eat bacon, you can eat eggs, you can eat butter, but then the next 2 days you don't eat hardly anything at all. Extreme low-calorie diets, those are called VLDLs, very low-calorie diets, and some, like The Biggest Loser and some of those shows, they incorporate some of that diet mentality in those people that they're over-exercising. So what do you think happens, by the way, when that program is over and they go back to their normal lifestyle? They gain the weight back. We can't subsist on an extremely very low-calorie diet for a long period of time. It won't work. Exclusion food diets, vegan diet. My office in Chattanooga for 3 years was smack dab in between a yoga studio and a fitness center. So I had vegans on one side of me and paleos on the other. So which one is right? It depends very much on your metabolism, your genetics, your muscle mass, your activity level, your desire, what you're trying to do. If you have a moral commitment to a vegan diet, then obviously paleo would never work for you. Someone who's diabetic, that has a lot of problems with blood sugar, would have a terrible time with the paleo diet because it's so low in carbohydrate. A vegan diet is very difficult for someone who is afraid of eating carbohydrate. That last group, the no carb, no fat, no protein vegan diet, what's left?
Malnutrition.
Thank you. I see a lot of those in my office, a lot of those in my office. And we're going to talk about that more in a minute, of how that happens. But listen to this. Any diet that excludes an entire food group, it's going to cause guilt and shame before the end of the day. You're going to end up feeling guilty that you were bad or you didn't do it right at the end of the day. It's doomed to fail. So keep that in mind, that when you're looking at your current diet intake and you're looking at what you want or what you see or what you hear your friends doing, listen for that exclusion, because if it's there, it can't be sustained over time. And look at this. This poor guy shows up in another one of my pictures. But what do you think this implies? What is the message here? Is he large because he has the ice cream and not the apple, or will he be small if he eats the apple and not the ice cream? I mean, and this is really what's happening, is that there's being a line drawn between good food, bad food, right, wrong, you know. And actually, don't you think you can have both, ice cream and an apple? You know, maybe he needed to work a little bit on portion control, you know, to figure out how to make that work. But you have to think about the messages that you hear. I want to talk about the gluten-free diet, because that's been building for a number of years, and it really started after the Atkins diet, when it was all low-carb hit. There was carb-free everything. Well, the Atkins diet, which was high-protein, low-carb, kind of went by the wayside. And so what was left was food manufacturers with another way. They've got to find out how to move all these low-carb or no-carb products. thus the hit on gluten. Now, that is not to say that there aren't people who absolutely need to follow a low gluten diet, but it's made for people with celiac disease, which is about 1% of the population, and it's life-threatening. Gluten is a huge molecule, and it can't cross the intestinal wall on people who have celiac disease. But we know now that there are some people who are gluten sensitive, and now we've got gluten intolerant. So there's all these little segues, and you've got to ask yourself if this is real or if this is just yet another way of food manufacturers trying to get us suckered into buying a lot of products. So there's a 25 to 50% increase in low gluten foods and gluten-free foods. Now, in my practice, I can tell you, I work with people that they are not celiac disease, but they're gluten sensitive. If they eat like a thick doughed pizza crust, or they eat Subway with a lot of doughy bread, or they eat big sandwich, they have a lot of problems with bloating in their stomach. They really have issues with that. So it's very possible that up to 30% of the population could have a sensitivity to gluten. And there is a book called Wheat Bellies, if any of you have heard about that. It's a little bit on the extreme, but they're talking about the fact that the wheat that's grown in our country now has been modified to such a great degree that it's much harder for our body to assimilate the wheat than the products that are out there. But the products that you're seeing a lot of that are the enriched and packaged foods, not in real food. So I'm real careful about saying that gluten sensitivity does not exist, because I know it does exist. But there's a lot of people who are doing gluten-free because they're wanting to lose weight. So here's the truth. If you choose to go gluten-free by choice rather than necessity, it's possible you're going to start eating less processed foods, because gluten is in every kind of cracker and crouton you can imagine. And you'll probably eat more fruits and vegetables. And manufacturers are growing to make up new foods. So there's a lot of new products on the market, over 1,000 new products on the market. So you can buy stock in gluten-free food. But here's the bad part. And I hesitated to put this in here, but I wanted you to see it. Sufferers of celiac disease are usually very, very thin. And so it's real easy to look at somebody and say, I want what she's having. And, thinking that girl doesn't eat gluten, look at her. When in fact she might be really sick. And that's why she doesn't eat gluten. So the widespread use unnecessarily of gluten-free food can really take away from the understanding that there are some people that, honest to God, can eat gluten. I hope that makes sense to you. It's just that thing that happens when we follow a trend, we get caught up in a myth of thinking this will make us healthy, when it might not. Gluten-free foods are more expensive. They might end up deficient in vitamins and minerals. A lot of people actually gain weight if they try to go gluten-free when they don't need to, because gluten-free foods are made up of a lot more products to try to make it palatable. And they have more calories than others, so there's more fat and sugar in gluten-free food. I spent a few minutes on that topic, and I did it on purpose, because when I was developing this presentation, I really tried to sit and think, what am I hearing about? And what am I hearing from young girls, high school girls, college women, young mothers, middle-aged women, and older women? I'm hearing gluten from every possible angle. And I'm sure you guys have been thinking about it too. Okay, non-diet approach. This is one of the coolest things ever, is this, because mindful eating is really what it's all about. It is about portion control. It is about paying attention. It is about noticing if something's upsetting your stomach and having the wherewithal to think, oh my gosh, if I eat this, I feel this way. Or I have a test tomorrow and I ate this and I couldn't think straight today. My brain was sluggish. So mindful eating is really about getting in tune with mind-body connection and putting it together and really, really living inside your body and paying attention to what happens in your body. So part of the principles are about eating slowly. And it means eating slowly. It means really being aware of holding a fork in your hand and putting it down in between bites. It means really chewing your food and not putting food in your mouth while you have food in your mouth. And let me say there's an exception to that, and that would be eating popcorn in a movie theater. There's no way you can be mindful if you're watching something that's incredibly intense and you're eating popcorn, so don't even try. But usually you can pick a meal a day that you can practice this. Maybe it's at lunch at a table with some friends and you all agree that you're going to do it and you prompt each other like, oh, I saw you do that. You know, cutting a piece of food while you're chewing the bite in front of it, you know, you're just trying to do that quickly. And I know you're busy, but taking the time to make yourself slow down can help you become aware of hunger and fullness cues. And that is, in its essence, of what mindful eating is about. And really, despite any issue that comes into my office, we usually end up tracking it to this one thing. Do you know when you're hungry? And do you know when you're full? Hungry is not shaking and weak and thinking, oh my God, I need food now. Hungry is a tickle. It's looking at the clock and it's thinking, when am I going to eat again? Where's my food? And what am I going to have? So you begin thinking about food. That's hungry. When you reach the other one, that's extreme. And it's very hard to make a good eating decision when you're really, really hungry. You might find yourself eating too fast, eating too much, then having a stomachache afterwards. Fullness cues have to be respected. And the way you know you're full is by eating slowly. And then you feel that food in your stomach. And you can say to yourself, I can now go a couple hours without eating again. And you know you've had enough to eat. It'll tide you over until your next eating opportunity. It also means that if you've got a study group and you're going to be studying till midnight and you're not going to make it to bed till 2, you're going to have to build in another meal. You're going to have to give yourself another opportunity to eat. If you don't, you're not going to think clear, and you're probably going to end up with a crashed immune system. So, tasting food, paying attention to food, watching hunger and fullness cues, it's a beautiful way to eat, and it's not restricting. So, obviously there's common sense things too. Watch your portions, eat your vegetables, keep it low in fat most of the time, make it simple, know what you're eating, don't skip. Don't skip. If you're so busy that you cannot possibly get to the curb or you don't have time to go all the way back to your dorm and get something, you need to have things in your backpack. Apples and bananas and nuts and seeds and bars and yogurt travel great. They really do. And yogurt will last a couple hours in your bag. And then don't diet. Don't diet, don't diet, don't diet. It's just going to set you up for failure. Now, about exercise. It needs to be part of daily life. Exercise shouldn't be extreme, and it shouldn't be punishment, and it shouldn't be done for the sole purpose of making your body burn calories. Exercise bulimia is a real thing. It's when we eat too much, and then we think we've got to go out and run 10 miles to burn off what we just ate. That's not what exercise is designed to be. It should be enjoyable, it should be moderate, and you should like it. And frankly, I've got my exercise clothes on underneath this. I was hoping to hit a yoga class this afternoon before I came up, but I wasn't quite ready updating my PowerPoint presentation, so I had to skip that. But make variety. Do yoga, practice Pilates, get some tapes. You go together on something and maybe do something within your sorority. And play with that. Hiking, the trails around here are awesome. You've got great places to run, but it's moderate. You shouldn't run when you're sick. You shouldn't run if you feel guilty, like I must. And if you don't exercise and you, quote, feel fat, if you don't exercise, you need to back up a little bit and see what's really going on, because the human body does not change size from a couple of days of not exercising. But I see a lot of people who are frantic if they don't get their exercise in. So if that's happening to you, you might want to back up a little bit and kind of rethink what the whole purpose of exercise is. So misconceptions, they're usually partially untrue. They confuse facts. They could be clearly untrue. or it could be based on misinformation. Let me give you an example. Girls who play basketball have more sprained ankles than men who play basketball. There's a study that supports that. But when you read into the study, what they did was they took girls who didn't play basketball ever and put them out and started to see how many times they had injuries to their ankles, sprained ankles with playing basketball. It was a skewed study. Girls who are basketball players do not have more sprained ankles than men who play basketball, but it was the way the study was designed. There's a study that will support any idea that you would like to back up. You want to think veganism is the only way to go? You can find 20 studies to support it. You think paleo and meat is the way to go? There's 20 studies to support that too. So always look at the references on anything that you read and see what was behind the design. What are they really looking at to make sure that what you're looking at is fact? The stuff that you read that comes across most internet sites are journalists that are writing articles based on something they see, and they have a terrible hard time understanding complex scientific data. And that's where a really good dietitian comes in, because I look at this stuff day in and day out, and I can help you weed through some of the stuff that comes through that doesn't make any sense. So pay attention to that, and just because you read that eating after 8 p.m. turns to fat in your stomach, think, really? Is there a clock in your stomach that says, okay, it's 8 p.m. shift, everything turned to fat? If you really think about it, a lot of the stuff doesn't make sense anyway, but it's definitely out there. So I want to let you know a few of them, and one of them is about red meat. I've had people come to see me that haven't eaten red meat for years because it's bad, it's wrong, it's bad for them, okay? There's actually, the truth is that red meat has chromium, zinc, and iron, and B12 in levels that you can't find anywhere else. So if you choose not to eat red meat, that's fine, but you've got a lot of replacement to do with supplements and other things to help build your system back up if you're not going to eat red meat. You can't just throw red meat out and say I'm not going to eat it without replacing it. I will tell you this, if you can get grass-fed beef, I would do it. That's what I do in my family. Grass-fed beef actually has stearic acid, which is similar to the omega-3 fatty acids that fish get. So that's kind of a nice piece of information for you. Skipping meals to lose weight. The truth is that if you skip meals, you can get away with it a time or two, but overall, your whole metabolic rate will start to decline. Our body is designed to survive starvation. And so when you cut your caloric intake down, your body will it'll just shut down, and it will covet fat more than anything else. Your body will burn stored protein, which will make you look really lean, but you'll still have a great deal of body fat underneath it because the body holds on to fat in starvation. It is a fact. So a lot of people that come into my office, I end up increasing their caloric intake to get their metabolism back up so that they start burning calories more efficiently again. It happens more than you would imagine, so don't skip meals thinking you're going to lose weight. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the clock thing. Those came out, the studies about not eating at night, because people with GERD, gastric reflux, get kind of sick if they lay back and they've got food that has to digest. It comes back up. So there were studies out that said that you shouldn't eat after 8 o'clock, but that's really what it was based on. What you want is about 2 hours before you go to sleep to allow digestion to occur a little bit before you go to sleep. Otherwise, you're fine. So eating frequently throughout the day is a really good idea to get your metabolic rate up. And then about 2 hours later, cut it back. So here's a nice big croissant and some butter. A myth is that you have to cut out carbohydrate to lose weight. This isn't, I'm not talking glycemic index here, I'm talking about eliminating carbohydrate. When you cut carb, you cut water. So, because you know, carbohydrate is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's H2O with a carbon molecule attached, right? So even if you're not into science, you know that we exhale carbon and we urinate, sweat out water. That's basically what carbohydrate is. So people who eliminate carbohydrate eliminate a lot of body water. And so within days, they can look much smaller. I'll be honest with you, I've had bodybuilders come to me that have a photo shoot, and I've helped them cut carb out, knowing they were trying to sculpt for a few days, but then they've got to get it back in. Because when you don't eat carbohydrate, that's what you crave, and that's what binging shows up on, is on carbohydrate. So usually, the truth is, low-carb eaters have low calorie overall, because when you eliminate a food group, you've cut calories. So remember that slide I said is still really all about calories? It's the truth. When you eliminate food groups, you eliminate calories, regardless of which way you try to cut them out. Brown sugar is just molasses and sugar. Brown sugar is not better than white sugar. Brown eggs are not better than white eggs. Brown eggs come from chickens that have a darker beak. But I think people tell me they'll only eat brown eggs. Brown rice has very little more fiber than white rice. But a lot of people will say, I will eat brown rice, but I'm not going to eat white rice. We'll compare the labels, there's very little difference. Yeah, it really determines the color of the milk. Fats, there's no such word as fattening. There's really not. There's no such thing as fattening. You can eat potato chips, you can eat ice cream, you can eat a candy bar. What becomes fattening is if you overconsume calories. And an overconsumption of calories are going to cause your body to store those extra calories as fat. So, but eating a potato chip won't make you fat. Eating a candy bar won't make you fat. Eating a lot of potato chips and a lot of candy bars over and over again will make your body want to store fat. But fat in itself does not make you fat. We have to have it. Our brain is like 70% fat. 70%, that organ up there is the fattest organ in our body. So if you eliminate fat, it really does affect the way that you're able to think. Super, super important to maintain cellular structure, to protect the internal organs, and to transport fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D. You have to have fat to transport it. Last but not least, detox diets. We have skin, liver, kidneys, spleen, gallbladder, intestines to help detox our body. Water is a wonderful detoxing agent, and I encourage you to drink water. But you don't have to detox your body. We've got organs that do that for us. There are some cultures that do it a few times a year, like a seasonal detox, where they eliminate like protein because it's harder to digest for a couple of days. But there's products on the market right now that are making billions of dollars a year trying to convince you that you need to detox your body. It's not true. So portion. Handfuls of any food is a great way for you to judge things. If you're at a party and there's plates of chips and everything else, just get what you can grab in your fingers. That's a serving size of any food that you want to have. We do need to watch the sodium and the sugar. Salt is a big problem in this country, but the more processed food you eat, the more salt you're going to have. Think smart. This is comparing a vegetarian pizza with pepperoni pizza, thin crust versus thick. Look at the difference in the calorie level. You don't eliminate pizza, just don't get the thick crust with the meat lovers. That's all you have to do. Look at the difference in sodium on that. So where's the sodium coming from? The pepperoni. Macaroni and cheese, my personal favorite. But look at that. A cup of mac has 410 calories. A cup of pasta with a red sauce, 230. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have macaroni and cheese. It means that choose having a marinara or a red sauce over a pasta a lot more often than you do the mac. But you don't have to eliminate that. Just keep it less. Look at the difference in the cereal. a flake cereal that doesn't have added sugar like a bran cereal, 240 calories, versus a granola type cereal at 440 calories. And again, it's not to say don't eat it, but just pay attention. Look at the fiber difference on the other one. So much more fiber when you do a good brand cereal that's going to fill you up and stick with you too. Sharing dessert is a fun way for you to make sure that you get to have your fun food without overdoing it. For the most part, that's a great idea, and a lot of restaurants are doing desserts in shot glasses now. I don't know if any of you've seen that, but what a great idea. We get just a bite of awesome, you know, just enough. Sometimes you want the whole thing. Yeah. That's okay too. Okay, so final thoughts on foods and feelings. Food should not induce guilt or remorse. It's just food, okay? It should not invoke moral value. Now, if you're vegan and you have true religious or personal feelings about eating meat, that's something altogether different, but there's still a responsibility to get it in correctly, to get the protein in. But there shouldn't be a moral value. There's a lot of people out there that think they're better than you because of the way they eat. I mean, there really are. So I see that sometimes at Whole Foods. You know, like they think that there's something special. It's not going to get you to heaven any quicker if you decide to eat a certain way. So we should eat with a certain responsibility. It's important that you pay attention to your overall health. That's why we're thinking about studying and grades and trying to be able to get on with your life. And it shouldn't be used as a replacement for emotions. Food and emotion get so intermingled, either wanting to avoid food and stay away from it. And it's sort of how you might feel about life right then. You just kind of want to restrict and be invisible, shut down, and push food away. Conversely, I see people who want to stuff back their feelings with food and feel uncontrolled and feel emotional, and foods can definitely come into your life that way. So just pay attention with that. And then, you know, this makes me want to talk to you about dysfunctional eating. And I don't know if you can see this on this brain. It's all about food thoughts. It's all food. I will, I won't, I should, I'll only have this. It's negotiating. I'll do it just this one time and then I'm going to eat better. Just food thoughts, food police thoughts. A lot of people have issues with this. So I want to just, I'm almost out of time, I want to just talk just a minute about the difference between dysfunctional and disordered eating. There's a lot of people that have messed up eating. I mean, there just are. And it could be the family of origin. It could be that the way you were raised, maybe there were some really strange things going on in the family with food, but it doesn't mean you're unhealthy. Maybe you just cut your food in little tiny pieces because that's what everybody else did. It's not life-threatening. It can be socially disruptive if you have a lot of dysfunctional eating habits. But it's not based in fear. It's rather in an unknowing. You know, like some people that have come to me that are petrified of eating fat. They don't have an eating disorder, but they definitely have some dysfunctional eating going on where they scrape everything and pot everything, and you know they won't eat if they go somewhere and all there is some kind of a fattening meal. It doesn't affect other people directly, and it's not necessarily about weight, dysfunctional eating. Disordered eating is where it starts to shift over a little bit. It can be life-threatening because I just mentioned all the nutrients and all the things we need from food, so you can see that if you are off balance with this, it could really affect your life. It can be all-consuming, just like the picture of the brain. It's thinking about food most of the time, either your food or what you're going to eat or what you're not going to eat or what you should eat or what you shouldn't eat and what food's going to be at the party you're going to go to. A lot of people have those thoughts running through their head all the time. It's based in fear. And most of the fear is about weight gain. It affects relationships because it's very hard to eat with someone who's a dysfunctional or a disordered eater. Because, you know, even when I go out to eat with people, sometimes they say, oh, we want to order before you do. Because if you order a salad, it makes everybody else feel bad if they were planning on getting, double cheeseburger and French fries. So, it does affect other people, the food choices that you make. And usually disordered eating is where you have that sense of feeling fat. So there's serious side effects of dieting. They say that 10 women, 10 men can go on a diet and 3 of them are going to end up with disordered eating. Just like if 10 people smoke pot, 2 or 3 of them are going to go on and do some other recreational drugs. So the truth of the matter is, dieting is what sets up eating disorder behavior. It's usually not what's behind everything, but it's what sets it up. It's like, you might already have a predisposition for it. As you start dieting and restricting, before you know it, it just takes over. So just some warning signs, quick warning signs. I've got a few brochures I'm going to give you that you can have, but these are some things to watch out for. Constantly thinking about food, counting calories, weighing yourself several times a day. I would never weigh. I would just give it to the person you dislike the most. Seriously, the scales are terrible. Severely limiting your foods, like some of the things I've already mentioned. Labeling food, good food, bad food. There's no such thing. There's spoiled food or rotten food, but there's not good food, bad food. And you're not good or bad no matter what you eat. Being severely anxious around meal times. Having a perfectionistic attitude that goes into what you eat. Lying about eating behavior, telling people you're eating when you're not. Food rituals, which are, I've seen some extreme food rituals, but you know what they are if you've got them. Frequent long-term trips to the restroom, that's usually associated with bulimia. Isolating from friends and family, not wanting to eat with people anymore because you can't stand to watch other people eat, or you don't want other people to watch you eat, and it just mushrooms, quickly can mushroom. Lying, cheating, and stealing. Believe it or not, lying and cheating are real common with bulimia, because when you're bulimic, you appear as if you're eating normally, but you're really not. And so you're sort of living in a situation that causes you to lie, and it kind of morphs into other parts of your life. Obsessing with books and websites on eating, that is eating disorders. And dieting, we're just reading and looking at these sites all the time. Absence of the menstrual cycle, which is a very big deal to lose your cycle. I had a girl tell me today, she wants to get better, but she does not want her cycle back. And I'm like, but you realize what that means. You can't lay bone down when you don't have your period anymore. It can affect you whether you'll be able to have children in your life. And yet, she's willing to do this to herself to keep her period away. Considerable weight loss in a short period of time. This is important. The human body is not designed to lose weight really fast. And when you lose weight really fast, something's usually terribly wrong. AIDS, cancer, a disease, something's wrong. So when we lose weight really fast, the system has a really hard time adapting to that. So when you see someone who loses weight quick, there's usually something wrong. And you probably need to identify that or talk with them about that. We see a lot of dental problems, especially from purging, because gastric acid destroys the back of your teeth. Hair loss, brittle nails. This body has to be cared for so well, and your hair is one of the first things that shows it when you have disordered eating, and brittle nails and dry skin, so many things that just hamper the beautiful body that we all have. What to do? First of all, you need to step back and examine your own belief systems and how you feel about your own body and how you judge other bodies. And are you contributing to the problem? Sorority life is hard, I know that. You guys are in a tough spot. And I don't mean just Sewanee, I mean this time in society, it's so visual. Facebook is terrible. It puts things out there and does things, makes you believe that everybody has this great life but you. There's so much happening that makes it even harder. Eating disorders are not going away. Anything, they're getting worse, and we're seeing them in younger and in older women now, on both ends of the extreme. So pay attention to what your own thoughts are and how your own judgment is. Try to keep a balance as best you can. Don't talk negative about anybody's body, and I want you to just snap each other when you hear it. Like, this is a zone where we do not body bash. be brave enough to say that to each other, because I know it's happening. You just hurt yourself and you hurt each other when you do that. Try to make eating a positive experience the best that you can. You know, the comments like, oh, I'm going to be bad, I'm going to eat this, or I'm going to be good, I'm going to eat that. Try to stop that. It's a habit you got from your parents, you know, but you can break that habit with a little bit of conscious effort to just try to leave those good, bad words out of there. Make it a positive experience to eat. And don't assume, as just because someone's very small, that they have an eating disorder, and don't assume just because someone's large, they need to lose weight. We all come in different shapes and sizes, but it's that extreme weight loss that you see in somebody you need to really be prepared for. Otherwise, it's just genetic makeup. If you know someone has an eating problem, don't talk to them in front of other people. Find a quiet place where just the two of you can get together and voice your concern. Don't say you look sick or you look so skinny. Try not to say body part words. Encourage them to visit the counseling center or talk to a physician. Call somebody that knows what you're talking about. Don't be the food police. It never, ever, ever helps to tell somebody else how you think they should be eating. It never helps. They come to me and I sit there and tell them these things. If they're ready for it when they hear it from me. If they refuse help, I think you should go to the counseling center yourself and just have somebody to talk to and how to work through it, because it's life-threatening. It's real hard when you know somebody that you love is struggling. So I think that's important. Okay, so ordinary things can become extraordinary. And it could be even just having an ice cream cone with a friend. It could be just sitting with somebody with a cup of hot chocolate one night. You know, it could be going and sitting with somebody that you see sitting alone and have lunch or dinner with them. It's amazing what we can do for each other. All right, it's 7:57, and I had an hour. I started a couple minutes late, but I'll open this up for questions or comments if any of you have anything you want to say. That's my contact info, and I'm easy to find. Chat me with food coach, so you can find me. Anybody? Yes.
I've heard all those rumors about like throwing up and you throw up in 30 minutes and doesn't count for way longer.
Yeah. The digestion of food begins in your mouth with saliva and amylase. So the digestion's already started even when you start chewing and swallowing. So she's saying if you purge within 30 minutes, it doesn't count because you haven't digested it. That's not true. You already begin digesting food almost immediately. So waiting, you know, when I have someone who's addicted to purging, I ask them to delay the purge as long as possible so they can adapt to feeling the food back in their stomach again. But purging under any circumstances, unless it's food poisoning, is a mistake. And it does lead to addictive behavior because it releases endorphins. And it actually, after you purge, feels good. So it's a very addictive process. Good question. Yeah.
When you're talking about the detoxing things, does that mean like the juice detoxing things? Like what do you think about those?
Like using juice for a few days?
I don't know.
The only one that has any value from a rational perspective would be if you decide to give yourself a bowel rest. In other words, give your kidneys and your intestines a break from digesting lots of food. You're just going to give them a break. And you can do a juice fast. And you can do like a 48-hour where you're drinking a lot of juice and water, and you're not exercising, you're just taking it really easy. You don't take your vitamins those 2 days. Maybe over Christmas break or something if you wanted to. If you felt like you were having problems with your stomach and you felt like you really needed to do that, but as far as weight loss, not effective. And as far as it doing any long-term benefit, yeah.
As far as all the misconceptions we talk about, like cow's milk or soy milk or almond milk, what do you recommend as far as that?
Gosh, that's a great question and loaded. I should have put that on my list. In fact, I didn't want to talk about it. It's a big subject, but let me tell you, the controversy is we are the only animal that drinks milk after weaning. The cow's milk, for the most part, is done in a process that causes growth hormone to be given to a cow to make them continue to make milk. There's alternatives to cow's milk. You can get protein other ways, calcium and vitamin D other ways. So it's not necessary to do cow's milk. So I see that. You can do soy milk, you can do almond milk, rice milk, lots of coconut milk, lots of alternatives that we know you can supplement well. The problem is it's readily available, it tastes good, most people can afford it, and even in an urban center, I mentioned the urban desert, that you can get milk in any market, anywhere, and you can have it as a source of protein, and it's usually not that expensive. So, we've got to be careful about what we're saying about certain foods. So milk is one thing, but then are you going to not do yogurt? Are you not going to do cheese? Are you not going to do cottage cheese? So it gets into a real fine line on that. So personally, I don't drink a lot of milk anymore. I like almond milk, and I use that as a substitute, but I will eat a really good cheese with a nice glass of red wine to go with it. So I think balance it out. Yeah.
If you're a vegetarian or I guess an advanced flexitarian, would there be signs if you were malnourished without realizing you were malnourished?
Yeah, good question. Two things I want to say about that. Number one, the body is designed to compensate for poor nutrition. So it'll start by letting your hair go and your nails and your skin go because you don't need those things to survive. So there's usually some outward signs that you'll notice, thinning hair or nails getting more brittle. You can see some outward signs, but you could go have lab work and it won't show a thing. I've had girls that I thought were on death's door and just begging them, please go get some lab work done. And they come back and they go, I'm fine, doctor said I'm fine. Because the body will compensate for starvation as long as it can. Best sign is hair loss and fingernails. And then if you're trying to lift weights, you notice that it's very difficult for you to build lean muscle. And that's a good sign you're probably not getting enough protein. Yeah, you plenty of sources to get without eating meat if you work at it. Yeah. I see another hand? Yes.
I think it's safe to say, and you could say from your experience, that once an individual is struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating, that those tendencies and that mindset can really stay with them for a long period of time, if not permanently. And I'm wondering if from your experience, and this might not be standard, but is there a certain breakthrough moment or a trend that you see with your clients that is effective in just getting them to think differently or really positive in that transition to recovery and just what that looks like?
That's a really good point. Recovery from an eating disorder takes a long time, and those tendencies do tend to stick forever, just like something on the bottom of your shoe. I tell all my clients I work with that they need to be allergic to dieting. When you've had an eating disorder, as soon as you start going into any kind of restrictive model, you just bring it right back up to the table again. I've seen girls who were paleo become vegans. I've seen girls who were anorexic become bulimic. It just keeps rearing its head. That game, you push one thing down, it pops up somewhere else. It happens. So consistent behavior, long-term, not dieting, trusting food, getting into your body as much as possible. Really just feeling hunger and fullness and what feels good and what doesn't. And loving yourself at whoever you are, at whatever size you are, is incredibly important. But aha moments come every day. I couldn't do this work if I didn't know people got better. And it's usually something obscure will happen. They decide that they don't want to live this way anymore, and they know they're going to have to stop, so they're going to go ahead and stop today. Whether it be restricting or purging or whatever the case. So it always comes, but with consistent behavior more than anything, and allowing all foods to fit in a meal plan. Anybody else? I really appreciate you all coming and listening to me and staying. I'm available to you if you have any questions for me. Not tonight, But any other time, just shoot me an email, text me, call me, snail mail me, whatever you want to do. I'm out there and totally available to you guys. Okay? Thank you.